Moving on to the next very interesting session on a strategic approach to cloud security with zero trust, where the speaker will share views on best ways to secure cloud without disrupting user experience. Does zero trust in cloud need a different approach? Roadmap for zero trust journey. Our speaker this evening is Amit Ranjan, co-founder, SlideShare, architect, DigiLocker. A brief introduction on Amit. Amit has helped build next-gen digital infrastructure platforms for the government of India. He's an architect for the DigiLocker project under the Digital India mission at the National E-Governance Division, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India. Previously, he was the co-founder of SlideShare to build and scale a global-scale internet company. Pushkal is CISO at Dr. Lal Path Labs, where he leads enterprise-wide development and execution of information security and privacy programs, technologies, and processes. He has previously worked with Microsoft, GMR Group, and HDFC Ergo. Moderating the session is Vinayak Godse, CEO, Data Security Council of India. Vinayak has been a part of the Data Security Council of India, DSCI, from its foundation, and has more than 27 years of experience in telecom infrastructure, information security, and IT transformation. Pleasure to have all of you here with us this evening. Without further ado, Vinayak, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Justin, for introduction of the session and introduction to the speaker. So in this session, in the NASSCOM Cloud Summit, we have been we'll try to discuss about how the security of cloud is at play, and more importantly, the kind of approach that are now being discussed in terms of security, zero trust approach for security, how that works in the cloud paradigm. So that's something we'll be trying to discuss in this session. And to do this discussion, we have two key speakers from the industry. Amit, who had been engaged in development and architecting and designing deployment of some of the important critical projects, basically product like a DigiLocker, and Pushkal, which I have been working for last so many years, is a Chief Information Security Officer of a leading pharmaceutical company. So we would try to really have this particular session in a more kind of a engaging way, where we like to listen both of the speakers about their views in this particular thing and carry this conversation. So I'll start with Amit. And Amit, you have been architecting the product, and can also briefly talk about the work that we are currently doing now, and a little bit talk about the cloud adoption and cloud's role in this product architecture designing, and briefly we'll talk about how you see as a product architect the security discussion that we do largely in the security community.
Right. So, just to quickly give a background, so DigiLocker is the project that I've been mostly associated with while working in the government. And this is housed out of the Ministry of Electronics and IT, which is MeitY, which is the nodal agency which handles everything related to IT in India. And the project started way back in 2015. And it is a cloud-based application right from the start. And the idea behind DigiLocker, I think, is this is a citizen-facing application, and all data, documents, certificates that government issues to Indian citizens over their lifetime. So think like your driving license and your school certificates and so on and so forth. So the idea is to kind of digitize all that and build a complete ecosystem so that you can reduce paper, and you can actually digitize, and you can all the positive benefits that come out of digitization. That is the main goal. From a cloud perspective, as I said, in 2015 we started off. It was largely an on-premise installation, and based out of NIC's own data center. So that's where all the systems were hosted, all the networks were done. And but over a period of time, as the product has grown, as its usage has grown, and there have also been important changes in government policy. Now I think we've kind of moved to more of a hybrid cloud kind of environment. So I think one of the key milestones that happened was, I think in 2016 or 17, MeitY came out with a cloud policy whereby government applications, whether at the center or the states, they could also actually either host it on government cloud, or they could kind of, there was a empanel list of private cloud providers who who had to go through security audits, and they had to locate their servers in India. And those empaneled providers were also made available to all government applications. So that was a pretty important and a big change, I would say, from a cloud perspective. And post that, what we started doing was that we actually started moving towards a hybrid cloud. So at the moment, think of it as a hybrid cloud installation. Some of the systems are still running out of NIC's Shastri Park data center, but a lot of stuff has now moved over the cloud, and we are using AWS as well. And I think the migration to the cloud has been a real godsend for us. My personal background, as I said, I come from the startup world. So I was completely, into cloud-based applications. So for me as well, this was one of the, important milestones, because I think what the cloud has done is that it has allowed the application to scale. And also, I would say that, some of the CSP systems and tools that have that are now natively available inside these cloud providers, I think they are quite important from a security perspective. So we can talk about that as we go along.
So Pushkal, in the sector that you work in, right, help us understand. I know pandemic has certainly had really leapfrog the kind of scale expectation from your sector, but apart from that scale requirement, especially with the pandemic, so help us understand the kind of driver that you see which is pushing the sector that you work in for the cloud adoption.
Okay, that's a very good question, Vinayak. So as I always say in my interaction, that the COVID has been the biggest change agent, and it has enforced the digital transformation more than what the CIOs have been able to do. And healthcare, and particularly, we are from a diagnostics industry, and what we do is very critical for the health of the country, and in that we deal with certain kind of data. So when we look at it, digital transformation, we definitely look at the cloud as the component of it. But that fundamentally it is about how we are enabling the business processes to increase the speed of the organization to be able to do everything that we do in a very fast manner. And in addition to that, my role in this whole spectrum of things is around ensuring the security of the entire ecosystem that we are trying to build as part of the digital transformation. So if you allow me, I'd like to speak about a minute or two about the security.
Yeah, because we are with you, so we certainly want to start this conversation about when we say cloud security means what, and help us understand the security challenges in this ecosystem, which is forcing you to think about cloud security.
Absolutely. So particularly, in this time and age where cloud is so ubiquitous, there is absolutely very difficult to find an industry which is one way or the other not leveraging cloud. In that, you largely see a lot of hybrid environment. Now, in my point of view, my views, I'll continue to be more as a personal views here. I see still there is a gap in terms of how we migrate the applications to the cloud. That's just one fundamental part that I wish a lot of the organization understand that well before they go to the cloud. I think it's absolutely okay to see cloud as place where there is a tremendous possibility in terms of elasticity, resiliency, scalabilities, and so on and so forth. But when we sort of lose track of the kind of challenges it brings, it becomes difficult for us to really deal with it in a long-term fashion. So let me give you a couple of examples. One of the very common thing that I see across the board is really lift and shift approach. Still, the idea of cloud adoption is that, let's get rid of things which you have on-prem and move them over to cloud. Now, what happens is if we do not take a cloud native approach, first we let go of leveraging the capabilities like serverless architecture, resiliency, scalability, and we are presenting a lot of cybersecurity risks because we never thought of cloud security architecture. Now, cloud security architecture is a broad term which need to be looked at it as all components. So when we talk about cloud security, we're just not talking about the cloud that we subscribe to, and obviously it is that which will come in place. but there is the user access part of it. There is the data that is being generated. There are workloads to it. There are networks to it. That all comprise of cloud security. So and then obviously when you have a holistic view of it, then you realize that there is a lot of work to be done. So I'd say that the primary challenge has been the lift and shift approach. The second challenge that I see when it comes to this cloud security beast is people not really knowing the cloud threats. This notion of when you're putting thing on cloud, then it means the security is sort of built in, which is partly true. But then all cloud security models are shared security model, and it is important to understand that what is it that you are accountable for, independent of the nature of the cloud that we choose, whether it is IaaS or PaaS or SaaS. Governance, risk, and compliance will continue to be the responsibility of the cloud customers. There is no exception there. So that's the second piece. Third piece is that I think it is important to understand that the cost of security is high in the cloud, because again, this is ubiquitous. People are accessing it all across the board. Parameters are virtually nowhere there. Therefore, the margin of errors are big as well. You see, still, if you look at the top, security issue of cloud, if I may give you an example, is cloud misconfigurations. That's still rank number one. And that is something we cannot control. We have developers, we have engineers, we have admins. They will eventually make mistakes. So if we don't have a way to discover those misconfigurations before the bad actor do, there is going to be a trouble eventually. Second in the list really comes around insecure interfaces. In cloud security, this part gets really pronounced more when compared to other model. There are API misconfigurations, API security, insecure interfaces, both at cloud provider end as well as the way we are consuming the cloud services. So it needed to be taken in consideration. Then you will see things like cloud services are basically one of the top attack vectors also. People want a quick computing. They're looking to deploy crypto mining applications in your cloud. They are looking to leverage your compute to do their work. They are launching large-scale phishing campaigns out of your network. You would have to be able to discover that before it becomes an issue for the organization. So I say, and basically I recommend everyone to at least read something called Egregious 11 by Cloud Security Alliance. It's a fantastic article that talks about what are the security challenges that we need to keep in mind when it comes to cloud adoption.
So, and these are really quite a comprehensive list of the things that you talk about. One definitely starts with how you are migrating to the cloud and the challenges and the ways that people have been doing that. And we certainly dwell down into some of the areas that you just talked about. But I'd like to go to Amit as somebody who is developing the product and somebody understand now. And it's a good realization that you started with on-prem and then you moved to the cloud and largely to the hybrid cloud basically. So as a developer, somebody who has idea, somebody is developing the product basically. So how much security get factor into the discussion that you do and that you make basically?
Yeah, I think as far as government applications goes, security is paramount. I've worked as a startup and then worked in the government. And I always tell people that I was very surprised when I actually, started working in the government, because security is a much bigger beast. Because, it's not just the crypto miners and, the lone hackers here and there. There are, state actors, and there are like all kinds of agencies which are trying to kind of, bring you down. And so in general, I think security has kind of, is much bigger threat and a thing than in a typical, enterprise class application. And, from my perspective, the way I would kind of chop up the security part is I think there's three parts to this. Number one is that because there is very sensitive data, and DigiLocker also uses Aadhaar data. So, the moment Aadhaar comes in, it kind of, becomes a much bigger problem as well. So I would kind of divide it into three tiers. So number one is the front end facing tier, which is the application layer. And the public perception that we have to constantly face is that, okay, itna sara data hai, how is DigiLocker safe? How is DigiLocker secure? Mera data kahin ja to nahi raha hai. So while it's less of a technical problem, but ask anyone on the road and that will be one of their primary concerns. So as an overall, if you're trying to build an overall product, you do have to address that. So it's the application layer security there, and what happens to privacy, consent, and all that. And then there is obviously, because DigiLocker is nothing but a gateway, right? We just kind of, are a gateway that is sucking in all these APIs and it is passing APIs. So I would say APIs and endpoints are a critical part of the infrastructure that needs to be secured as well. And thirdly, like, the cloud, the networks, the hosting, and the services that you have on the cloud installations or the on-prem, I would say that is the third part. Thankfully enough, on the first part, on the application, now India has, adopted what is called DEPA, which is it is a security framework architecture that, across all these India stack applications, which kind of lays down how the consent mechanism for a lot of these applications is going to be managed. So, when I say consent, that, this is citizen data, and the data is to be shared by citizens across different applications. So how will that consent be managed? Under what conditions will the data be shared? The citizens have the right to revoke their consent. They can specify, in what conditions, for how long, with what kind of usage parameters can each of these data points can be shared. So that kind of, is something that has happened over the last few years. I think 2018 MITI came out with the consent architecture framework, which is now used as a standard across lots and lots of government applications like UPI and Aadhaar and DigiLocker and so on and so forth. So thankfully that has kind of, being a real guiding light for us as far as the security on the application side is concerned. And then, as I said, API security is a big point here. So I think, we have multiple tiered architecture here. We are using, access tokens and refresh tokens, and there's like, whitelisting and, rate limiting, and the typical things that you would do in any enterprise class applications. So that is implemented.
Let me stay here with you. So, 2-3 areas basically. So, for the user, I think DEPA is data information protection architecture. Right?
Correct.
That has been a guiding factor for many of the applications, especially the government side. People use that for protection of the data. But as we are with you, so one important part is this API. Kushal also to a certain level mentioned that. So where the cloud applications are coming and many capabilities are available on cloud, so it becomes easy for you to consume those APIs and work on those APIs basically, right? And that's why API security, the kind of exchange happening between your application, many other applications, which are also allowed in the cloud, becomes very important part basically, right? And so one is certainly that, and another part is the developmental level security, right? Because you are in the area of development of product basically. So this application that you are putting there. So how do you make sure that applications are developed in a secure way? So there is something called DevSecOps basically. We adhere to those practices. So just some two areas basically just help us understand from API security perspective and DevOps security operations.
Right. So let me say that, on cloud, one of the things that we use, for example, is the IAM, the Identity Access Management System, that is to manage all, access, who all are accessing the cloud and the rules that are there. Then secondly, I think in AWS, we are also using the guardrails, which kind of allows us to implement the governance policies, and it kind of does this continuous monitoring of all the systems, and it's kind of, trying to throw up all these alerts and all. As far as the development environment is concerned, so, I think there are multiple factor authentication that is implemented at the container level. So if any of the developers is trying to access any of the services or any of the segments there, then this is you have multiple factor of authentication there. Then I believe there's geofencing which is done, which is to make sure that there are no cases of unauthorized access that is kind of from, let's say, outside India, or even within India. You can actually, if you want to, control it. At the API level, as I said, we are using access tokens and refresh tokens, and then there is a security key based hashing system that is used. I think you are using rate limiting on the API so that there is no, nobody is able to bring down the API using some kind of a malicious attack. The way I would describe it is the combination of some of these ways where we are kind of trying to enforce security. We are also helped, by the way, from an external perspective by Certain. So that is a very valuable resource, because Certain, what it does is that it it kind of does sweeping on the outside of the network, and it keeps on sending us alerts in case of any anything that they detect.
In monitoring, right?
They are doing external monitoring, and that is very helpful. There have been many cases where actually the internal team did fail to detect something, but it was detected from outside, and they send an alert, and we could quickly kind of patch that, or we kind of fill that up.
Let me come to Pushkar. So now the strategies for cloud security, and we just heard from both of you, and now even Amit talked about how it uses the AWS guardrail. So it's one example, but there are a lot of capabilities cloud service providers offer, right? This is, and you can build a strategy based on adopting this CSP, right? Or there you can also use some of the third-party security capability, or sometimes you can work on cloud native security as well, or sometimes you can build engineer entire security on cloud by using some open source capability. So these are alternates available. So help us understand if you are building a strategy, basically, how do you leverage this kind of capabilities, and which alternative you basically suggest or choose out of this thing, and if there are some more to add, it is helpful to add to that.
Sure, that's a great question. So if you look at, from our standpoint, we build technology internally, as well as we basically take commercial off the shelf cloud-based tools also. So when we look at it, we have two different kind of things to be taken care of. Now, strategy in general, my approach has always been top to bottom. I try to understand that what is my business driver, what is my business goals, and what is it really that is driving the cloud adoption. And once I understand that clearly, all my options get open up. So particularly, we all understand that there are critical applications are being deployed on cloud. And there are a lot of, at least in the last 5 to 7 years, great amount of development has happened to exclusively bringing the cloud native security tools. Now, back in the day, if you look at it, you see there are 2-3 major cloud service providers, and they are giving you built-in services, right? So in a way that implementers are the reviewers. And I generally did not like that idea very well. Now I'm really happy to see the product developments which are happening in this area. So when we talk about alternatives, and I'm going to talk about something really outside of traditional AWS and Azure for that matter. Let's look at it. What are the other vendors are providing you that can very much get in line with your cloud security strategy. So again, if I go back to my full stack cloud security point of view, where we look at cloud as a holistic information processing unit, then we look at the infra piece, the workloads, the networks, the data, and the users all across the board. And then we look at it, what do I have in terms of solve this problem? We look at processes, and we also look at the technology intervention. In technology, if you look at it, there are some great, CNAP platform available these days, which are cloud native, application protection platforms. Yeah, and what it is doing is essentially looking at the cloud at the contextual level. It's not a listing of things. What we suffered greatly, a point solution model. Okay, if you want to solve vulnerability, here is a product for vulnerability management. If you solve identity and access management, here is IAM. If you solve, let's say, malware problem, here is another product for you for anti-malware and so on and so forth. And then you lose your mind in terms of making all that working. So it's a great time from a cloud security standpoint, and its usage has gone far and beyond. These CNAP products is what I am finding it rather useful. So if you look at it from a workload production, it is you can leverage the capabilities which are coming as part of secure configuration management, which is very important. You don't want to miss out any misconfiguration. You want to learn them before the bad actors learn it. You want to continuously sort of monitor and remediate the problems of your environment. Gone are the days where you will intervene as part of, your periodic vulnerability assessments and penetration testings. We ought to be able to sort of do it continuously. And it is important. You see, the development is not happening, that small and, small pace.
Pushkar, you have to bring the zero trust approach, right? Because that's been the architecture concept has been always been talked in last 2 years, in fact. Is there a sense of that approach to cloud security? If you can briefly answer, then I'll come to Amit.
Absolutely. Zero trust is absolutely the way the technologies are being built. If you look at the cloud, there is no implicit understanding. The clouds, even the security product and the native cloud environments are coming with some of these practices in mind. You see, geofencing. The cloud is by default shrinked. If you want to make it open, you're making it open by way of allowing certain IPs to it. You're doing these segmentations.
Now, in modern day, each of the technology, be it on-prem or be it on cloud, zero trust is driving a lot of those ideas in terms of how the solutions and practices are built. So, I mean, from the strategy perspective, right, as a developer who is designing and architecting, designing the product, basically, what do you rely on? Do you really rely on some of the external capability providers, or you try to look at those capabilities available in open source, in cloud CS? So, what are your strategic tools, basically, that you leverage in terms of building the cloud?
Yeah, so I would say that, from a zero trust perspective, I mean, zero trust is essentially a strategy. I mean, it's not one tool or it's not one thing. It's not a magic wand that we can buy. What I've seen in the government, and more specifically in the DigiLocker team as well, is that it is kind of a combination of things that we have used. So I think starting grounds up from 2015 onwards, when the project started, I think we were trying to do a lot of things using open source tools. But over time, as the application has moved to a hybrid model, then I do think we've tried to leverage some of the CSP capabilities of what AWS offers, and we've actually found them quite capable. And also, to be honest, there are limitations in a government system with regard to the kind of people you can hire, or the kind of some of these typical things like a senior cloud security. The way you could hire in the private sector, I don't think we have as much latitude. So it also, the choice that we have made in the government is also reflective of some of those restrictions. So we've used CSP capabilities. As I said, I have personally found the certain service, which is when they are actually monitoring from outside and issuing alerts and threats about specific things either inside our system or in generically things that are going on. So to my mind, I think you need actually a combination of multiple things. It's not one thing that is going to help you solve the security thing.
And I think with this, I know the time is definitely short for carry out discussion on cloud security strategy. But really thank you, Amit and Pushkar, for spending time with us and really revealing the things that from the different perspective, right? One Pushkar from the security perspective, Amit from the product architecture perspective. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Pushkar. Thank you, Amit.
Thanks a lot. It was good to be a part of this.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. And over to you, Justin.
Well, thank you, Amit, Pushkar, and Vinayak for that insightful and informative and engaging session.